welcome back to the deep dive. You ready to jump into some more fascinating Islamic history?
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Today, we are going deep into the life of Abdullah ibn Masood.
One of the most remarkable figures from early Islam.
Absolutely, and we're going to be using excerpts from a lecture by Shah Dr. Yasir Kati.
A great source for learning about Ibn Masood's life.
So we have a real treat in store. This deep dive, let me tell you, it's full of surprises.
Ibn Masood's journey is anything but ordinary.
Right. We're talking about a close companion of the Prophet Muhammad.
And someone who left a lasting impact on Islamic scholarship.
But the path he took to get there, not what you'd expect.
Not at all. What's really striking is that he wasn't born into a position of power.
Not at all. No influence.
He faced some serious social barriers.
Which makes his rise even more fascinating. So, set the scene for me, okay? What was Ibn Masood's background
Like, how did that shape his early life?
in pre-Islamic Mecca?
Well, you have to understand the social structure of Mecca at that time to really get Ibn Masood's story. He belonged to the Banu Hudayl tribe,
Okay.
a non-Qurayshi Arab tribe.
And that put him in a tough spot.
Tough spot is an understatement. His father had migrated to Mecca
Okay.
and formed a hilf,
Okay, what's a hilf?
basically an alliance, with someone from the Quraysh.
So it was like, I don't know, sort of like a historical visa,
Oh,
granting some protection.
yeah, you could say that. It gave him some level of protection and allowed him to participate in Meccan society.
So participate, but not quite a full citizen.
Not quite. More like a second-class citizen.
Okay.
The hilf let him live and work in Mecca,
Right.
but he didn't have all the rights and privileges of the Quraysh,
Of course.
who were, the dominant tribe,
right.
the
Yeah.
top dogs.
Yeah, that must have been incredibly frustrating, this hilf system.
Hmm.
It really highlights, I think, the rigid social hierarchy of that time.
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't just theoretical. It had real consequences.
So did he face any specific disadvantages because of this?
Absolutely. Ibn Masood, even though he was born and raised in Mecca, he was always seen as an outsider.
Right.
Probably stuck with lower status jobs, no real access to resources, to decision-making power.
It's hard to even imagine. It really puts his eventual rise in the Muslim community into perspective, though, right?
It really does. To go from that kind of marginalization.
To such prominence. It makes you wonder if his experiences as someone who was marginalized, resonated with others who were drawn to Islam's message.
The message of equality.
Right.
It's a very insightful observation because Islam, with its emphasis on the brotherhood of believers,
Right.
it offered a radical alternative
To the tribalism and social division.
that were just like baked into that society.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's talk about his conversion to Islam, because it seems like his first encounter with the Prophet Muhammad was anything but ordinary.
Yeah, you could say that. He was just a young boy tending to some goats.
Right.
For this wealthy Qurayshi man named Uqba ibn Abu Muwayt,
And remind me, who was Uqba?
he was one of the Prophet's staunchest opponents.
Oh, wow, yeah, I remember him. He's the one who infamously threw a carcass on the Prophet during prayer.
That's the one.
What a stark contrast in character.
Oh, yeah. Night and day.
So, what happened when the Prophet met Ibn Masood? What was this encounter like?
So the Prophet, fleeing persecution, he came across Ibn Masood and asked him for some milk.
Makes sense. He needed sustenance.
But Ibn Masood, even as a young boy, was incredibly honest.
Oh.
He told the Prophet straight up, I can't give away milk that doesn't belong to me.
Wow, I love that detail. It says so much about his integrity, even at such a young age.
Right. Honesty from the get-go.
So what happened next?
So the Prophet then asked, is there a goat that's not producing milk?
Okay.
And Ibn Masood pointed one out. The Prophet touched the goat's udder, prayed, and miraculously it filled with milk.
Whoa. Can you imagine witnessing that as a young boy?
Talk about a life-changing moment.
It must have been awe-inspiring. No wonder this encounter had such a profound impact on Ibn Masood.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
So what was the Prophet's reaction to Ibn Masood's eagerness to learn?
The Prophet saw his potential immediately. He even called him intelligent and precocious,
Wow.
encouraged his thirst for knowledge. And that simple exchange, it marked the beginning of Ibn Masood's journey into Islam.
It's amazing. The Prophet saw something special in this young boy, someone from a marginalized background, and nurtured his potential.
That's the beauty of Islam,
Right, exactly.
It recognizes the inherent worth of every individual.
It wasn't all smooth sailing from there, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, his conversion, it met with some opposition.
Oh, sadly, yeah. When some members of the Quraysh tried to negotiate with the Prophet,
Right.
they demanded he distance himself from his followers,
Oh, wow.
specifically naming Ibn Masood and other early converts who weren't from the Quraysh.
So they saw these converts as what?
Lowly, unacceptable to be associated with.
So basically they were saying these people are beneath us.
Exactly. You shouldn't be associating with them.
Wow. It's a stark reminder of the prejudice
Yeah.
and the social divisions that existed then. How did the Prophet respond to this demand?
He completely refused.
Of course he did.
He wasn't going to abandon his followers,
Right.
especially based on their social status.
Absolutely not.
In fact, a divine revelation came down strongly condemning the Quraysh's demand
Really?
and affirming the equality of all believers.
That's a powerful message.
Really?
And so relevant today even.
Right. Yeah.
Stand up against injustice. Uphold those values. Equality, inclusion.
It's a timeless message.
This was a defining moment, wasn't it? That solidified Ibn Masood's position within that early Muslim community.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine being a young convert already facing persecution.
Right.
And seeing the Prophet defend you so fiercely.
It must have been so empowering.
It really speaks to the strength of their bond.
And the Prophet's unwavering commitment to justice. So, despite facing this persecution, Ibn Masood, he remained steadfast.
He did. In fact, he participated in both migrations.
Although,
First to Abyssinia, then to Medina.
Wow.
these weren't just physical journeys. These were incredibly difficult and dangerous undertakings.
Right. They were uprooting their entire life.
Exactly. A complete upheaval.
It's remarkable that Ibn Masood, despite, his challenging beginnings
Right.
and the persecution he faced,
He was there every step of the way.
present at every step of this pivotal period in Islamic history.
It really highlights his unwavering faith
Mm.
and his dedication to the Muslim community.
And to think, this is just the beginning of his story.
You haven't heard anything yet. It
Oh.
only gets more remarkable from here.
Okay, before we go any further, can you explain something? You mentioned the term Sahaba earlier.
Yeah.
For those who might not know, what does that actually mean?
Sahaba is an Arabic word. It
Yeah.
refers to the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, those who met him, believed in him, and died as Muslims.
So they were there from the start.
They were instrumental in the development of Islam, transmitting the Prophet's teachings, establishing the foundations of the Muslim community. Got it.
Yeah.
So when we talk about Ibn Masood's close relationship with the Prophet, we're talking about a bond forged during a truly transformative period.
A period that shaped the course of history.
Exactly. So we've seen that Ibn Masood's conversion experience was pretty dramatic.
It was definitely memorable.
But his relationship with the Prophet, it went beyond just being a believer, right?
Oh, absolutely. It deepened over time. He actually became the Prophet's personal attendant.
Wow. So what did that involve? What kind of things did he do?
He was constantly by the Prophet's side, taking care of his everyday needs, carrying his belongings, fetching water.
So essential tasks, but also showing a lot of respect and closeness.
Exactly. And preparing miswak.
Okay, now for those who might not know.
Yeah.
What exactly is miswak?
Miswak is a natural toothbrush.
Okay.
It's made from the twigs of the Salvador persica tree.
Interesting. So natural oral hygiene.
Yeah, they've been using it for centuries for oral hygiene. And it actually has some amazing antibacterial properties.
Wow. So even back then, they were taking good care of their teeth. What's interesting is that it's not just these grand gestures that reveal Ibn Masood's special relationship with the Prophet.
Right.
There's actually a rather amusing story about Ibn Masood's shins.
Ah, yes, the story of the miswak tree.
That really highlights their bond. So tell me about this story.
So one day, the Prophet asked for a miswak, and Ibn Masood, always eager to please.
Yeah.
He climbed a tree to get a fresh one.
Okay, wait, I'm picturing this. Young Ibn Masood scrambling up a tree,
Right.
wind blowing, maybe his clothes get a little disheveled.
I can see it.
Sounds like a recipe for some lighthearted teasing.
You're exactly right. As he was climbing, his lower garment rode up,
Oh.
exposing his thin shins, and some of the companions, they started laughing.
It's funny how something so simple like a pair of skinny shins could become like the subject of amusement.
Right.
But I bet the Prophet didn't find it so funny.
You're right about that. The Prophet immediately stopped them. He said, "Are you laughing at his shins? I swear by Allah, on the day of judgment, they will be heavier in the scales than Mount Uhud."
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's a pretty powerful statement. It really puts things in perspective.
it really does.
So what's the deeper meaning here? Is this about literal weight?
No,
Or is there something more symbolic?
definitely symbolic. The Prophet is using this incident to teach a lesson about true worth. He's saying outward appearances, they can be deceiving.
Right.
What truly matters is a person's faith, their devotion, their service to God.
So those shins, the very ones they were mocking, they represent his unwavering service
Exactly.
to the prophet and, by extension, to Islam.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful way of reframing the situation.
It really is. The prophet takes this moment of teasing and turns it into a powerful lesson about what's truly valuable in the eyes of God.
It shows how deeply he respected and appreciated Ibn Masud.
Even for what might seem like, mundane acts of service.
Right. Speaking of respect and appreciation, it seems that Ibn Masud's dedication earned him a unique level of trust
Oh, for sure.
from the prophet. Because we hear about him being privy to some pretty private conversations.
Yes. There's a hadith where the prophet tells Ibn Masood, "You have my permission to lift the curtain and listen to my private conversations."
Okay, hold on. I'm assuming this isn't meant to be taken literally.
No, of course not.
What's the significance of this statement?
It's a symbolic expression, highlighting the unique bond they shared. The prophet trusted Ibn Masood implicitly, and this statement, it shows the depth of their connection, the confidence he had in Ibn Masood's discretion.
It makes you wonder what kind of insights he might have gained.
To be a fly on the wall during those conversations.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing.
It's a glimpse into the personal life
And the thoughts of the Prophet Muhammad.
that very few people had access to.
So far, we've seen Ibn Masud as this young convert, this dedicated servant, and a trusted confidant. But this was also a time of great turmoil and conflict. Did Ibn Masud, despite his small stature, participate in the battles?
He did, in every single battle during the prophet's lifetime.
Wow. Every single one. That's incredible.
He was there.
What drove him to participate so actively?
His unwavering faith, his commitment to the Muslim community, those were driving forces for sure. And while he might not have been the most physically imposing figure,
Right.
his courage and determination, they were undeniable.
Were there any specific moments during these battles that highlight his character or his bravery?
There's a story from the Battle of Badr. Remember Abu Dhabi?
Oh, absolutely. The staunch opponent of Islam.
That's him. Well, in the Battle of Badr, Ibn Masud was among the group tasked with finding Abu Jahl's body.
After he was killed.
Right. And it was Ibn Masud who delivered the final blow, ending Abu Jahl's life.
That's a significant moment considering the years of persecution they endured.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been an incredibly emotional experience.
Oh, I can't imagine the mix of emotions he must have felt.
Relief, a sense of justice, but also, the weight of taking a human life.
Even that of an enemy.
It's a reminder that these early Muslims, they weren't just fighting for survival.
Yeah. Right.
But they were also grappling with these complex moral dilemmas.
In the midst of conflict, it's a side of history that we don't always get to see.
So we've seen Ibn Masud in all these different roles.
He wore many hats.
A humble servant,
A courageous warrior.
a trusted confidant. But his most enduring legacy, it lies in his contributions to Islamic scholarship.
Absolutely. Ibn Masud was a renowned scholar, especially when it came to the Quran.
So what made him such an authority? Was it simply his closeness to the prophet?
Well, that definitely played a huge role. He was present during the revelation of many verses. He had this deep understanding of their context, but he was also known for his incredible memory and his ability to recite the Quran beautifully.
We often hear about the Sahaba being known for memorizing the Quran, but what does that actually mean in practice?
So at that time, the Quran wasn't compiled into a single book like we know today.
Right.
The Sahaba, they memorized the verses as they were revealed.
Oh, wow. So they were essentially like walking libraries.
Exactly. They carried the Quran in their hearts and minds. It was an incredible responsibility.
It really was.
And Ibn Masud was considered a master of this oral tradition.
Okay.
In fact, there's a hadith. The Prophet instructs Muslims to learn the Quran from 4 specific companions.
Okay.
And guess who's mentioned first?
I have a feeling it's Ibn Masud.
You got it. He was so highly regarded for his mastery of the Quran, both in terms of recitation and understanding.
I'm curious. Are there any stories that showcase his skill as a reciter? Was it just about accuracy, or was there something more to it?
There's a story that really highlights the power and beauty of his recitation.
Okay.
One day, he was reciting Surah An-Nisa during prayer,
Okay.
and guess who happened to be listening behind him?
This is either going to be heartwarming or a little awkward.
It's definitely heartwarming.
Okay.
It was the Prophet Muhammad himself, along with Abu Bakr and Umar.
Wow. To recite in front of those 3.
Talk about pressure.
What was the reaction?
They were visibly moved. The prophet, especially, he was deeply touched. He kept repeating, "Ask, and it shall be given to you."
Really? Like, he was so moved by the recitation
Yeah.
that he was basically saying that God was ready to grant Ibn Masud anything he asked for.
Exactly. A truly heartfelt recitation can have that kind of impact.
What did Ibn Masud ask for?
His prayer was beautiful. He prayed for unwavering faith, continuous blessings, the highest level of paradise, and to be in the company of the Prophet Muhammad in the afterlife.
Wow. Those are some weighty requests.
They are.
And to have the prophet confirm that they were granted?
It speaks to the power of his connection.
With God.
Yes.
So we have this hadith praising Ibn Masud's knowledge. And then we have this incredibly moving story that demonstrates his skill. Yeah. And the spiritual impact of his recitation. Is there anything else that solidifies his reputation?
There's another hadith. The prophet said, "Whoever wishes to recite the Quran as fresh as it was revealed, let him recite it the way Ibn Masud recites it."
That's high praise. It's like saying, if you want the pure, authentic experience,
listen to Ibn Masud.
listen to him.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the beauty of his recitation.
Right.
Ibn Masud had a deep understanding of the Quran's meaning, the context. He even claimed to know the reason behind the revelation of every single verse.
Every single verse. That's a bold claim. Is there any way to verify something like that?
It's difficult to say for certain, but we do know that he was widely recognized for his vast knowledge. He had witnessed firsthand the circumstances surrounding the revelation of many verses, and he spent years studying them, reflecting upon them.
So he wasn't just memorizing words. He was understanding the meaning, the historical context, the lessons behind each verse.
He was a living link to the very source of the Quran.
Exactly. And this depth of knowledge is what shaped his legacy as a teacher and a scholar.
Which we'll see in the next part of our deep dive.
So we've explored his remarkable journey.
From humble beginnings
to close companionship with the Prophet.
His mastery of the Quran.
But what happened after the Prophet's death? Did he continue to play a role?
He absolutely did. Ibn Masud became a leading scholar.
Okay.
A teacher.
So he wasn't content to simply possess all this knowledge.
No. He felt this responsibility to share it.
Right, because knowledge in Islam, it's not meant to be hoarded.
Exactly. It's meant to be shared, spread for the benefit of the community.
Benefit everyone.
And Ibn Masud, he took this seriously. Very seriously. In fact, he was appointed to a very important position by Caliph Umar.
Okay, which one was that?
Umar appointed him as the teacher and mufti of Kufa.
Now, Kufa was a major city.
A major city.
In early Islam. But just for our listeners who might not be familiar, could you explain what a mufti does?
Sure. A mufti is an Islamic scholar who is responsible for issuing legal rulings, interpretations of Islamic law.
So they're experts.
Experts in Islamic jurisprudence.
Okay.
And their opinions are sought after to clarify matters of religious practice and law.
So it's a position of great authority.
Great responsibility.
You're saying that Umar entrusted Ibn Masud, who started as a marginalized outsider, to guide an entire city in matters of faith and law.
Precisely. It shows the immense trust, the respect that Umar had for Ibn Masud's knowledge and his judgment. He wasn't just a scholar. He was known for his piety, his integrity, his deep understanding of the Quran and the Prophet's teachings.
It's remarkable. When you think about it, the arc of his life started at the very bottom
of the social ladder.
And through his dedication,
sincerity,
he rose to become one of the most respected figures
in early Islam.
It's a testament to the power of faith. The importance of seeking knowledge.
Ibn Masud's story, it shows that leadership. It's not about social status or wealth. It's about character, knowledge, service to others.
Now, we know the early Muslim community wasn't without its challenges.
Oh, yeah. Disagreements.
Was Ibn Masud involved in any controversies?
During his time as a scholar and leader, there was one issue, a sensitive issue, the compilation of the Quran under Caliph Uthman.
The standardization of the Quran. I've heard about this. Refresh my memory.
Okay. So during the Prophet's lifetime, the Quran was preserved through memorization, oral transmission, like we talked about, after the Prophet's death. As the Muslim empire expanded, there was a growing concern about the potential for variations, discrepancies.
I can see how that would be a concern
Right.
with so many people memorizing and reciting.
Across vast distances.
There's a risk of the text
Yeah.
becoming fragmented or corrupted.
Exactly. So Caliph Uthman, seeing this potential problem,
Yeah.
he decided to create a standardized version,
Written.
a written version of the Quran, to serve as the definitive text.
Okay, makes sense. For the entire Muslim
The
community.
whole community, he tasked a committee
Right.
to compile all the existing written fragments and compare them with the memorized versions
Held by the Sahaba.
by the Sahaba.
That sounds like a monumental task.
It was a huge undertaking.
So how did Ibn Masood factor into all of this?
Ibn Masood, as you can imagine, he was key. He had his own copy of the Quran,
Really?
yearly complete,
Wow.
written in his own hand,
And he knew the Quran inside and out.
inside and out. However, he had some reservations about Uthman's initiative.
What were his concerns?
His concerns, they came from his deep connection to the
I
Quran.
can imagine.
Remember, he had learned it directly from the Prophet,
Mm-hmm.
witnessed its revelation, dedicated his life to studying it. He had his own way of reciting it, interpreting certain verses,
Mhm.
and he worried
Worried that.
that a standardized version
Yeah.
might not capture the full richness, the nuance of the Quran as it was revealed.
So it was a clash between his personal attachment and the need for a unified text.
What a community. It was a delicate situation.
It really was. It highlights the challenges of preserving and transmitting these sacred texts across time, across cultures.
Across everything. But in the end, Ibn Masood chose to prioritize the unity of the Muslim community.
He did.
He submitted to the caliph's authority, surrendered his personal copy of the Quran.
That must have been such a difficult decision,
Oh, it must have been.
especially for someone who held the Quran so dear. It speaks to his humility,
Right.
his understanding of the bigger picture.
He recognized the potential for disunity,
Right.
confusion. It posed a greater threat than the loss of his personal version.
Right.
It was a testament to his wisdom
Yeah.
and his commitment to the well-being of the Ummah.
So despite this disagreement, his legacy as a scholar
Remained intact.
remained intact.
Absolutely. His teachings, his interpretations, they continued to influence scholarship.
Yeah.
His students carried on his legacy. One of his students, Alqama ibn Qis, he became a renowned scholar himself.
Yeah.
And Alqama's student was none other than Ibrahim al-Nahai,
Another huge figure.
a towering figure in Islamic scholarship.
So we're talking about a chain of knowledge here.
A chain of knowledge, it goes even further. Ibrahim al-Nahai's most famous student was Imam Abu Hanifa.
One of the most influential Islamic jurists of all time.
Of all time.
So the teachings of Ibn Masood passed down,
Through generations.
reached Imam Abu Hanifa, and shaped the development of one of the major schools of Islamic law. That's incredible.
That's an incredible legacy. Ibn Masood's impact on Islamic scholarship, it's immeasurable. He influenced generations of scholars.
Wow.
And his insights, they continue to be studied, debated to this day.
This has been an eye-opening deep dive. We've covered so much. And it's clear that Abdullah ibn Masood,
He was an extraordinary individual.
he was extraordinary. He embodied the spirit of early Islam, unwavering faith, dedication to knowledge, service to the community.
And his story is full of lessons that are relevant even today. True worth is not about social status or wealth. It's about character, knowledge, service to others.
And it highlights the importance of seeking knowledge, sharing it, preserving the legacy of those who came before us.
His dedication to the Quran, his pursuit of understanding. It's inspiring for anyone who wants to deepen their connection with faith and knowledge.
You've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
I hope so.
Ibn Masood's story is a powerful reminder of the impact one person can have,
Yeah.
even when facing adversity.
It really is. It encourages us to reflect on our own lives.
Yeah.
Ask ourselves, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey through the life of Abdullah ibn Masood. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.